Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 13th, 2017 meeting of the City of Brentwood Planning and Zoning Commission. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Michael Daming,
Here.
Mark Otava,
Here.
Jennifer Hansen,
Here.
Michael Hart,
Here.
Rebecca Jacobs,
Here.
Clint Lewis,
Here.
Art Nelson,
Here.
John Herman is here, John Ritter,
Here.
Lisa Shirley,
Here.
Tom Shipley.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Paul Moran.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nuremberger. Are there any changes to the August 9th, 2017 meeting minutes? Seeing none, they'll stand approved by acclamation. We have one item under old business. Everyone will recall the custard shop that was before us at the last meeting and at the subcommittee meeting. It's my understanding that the applicant has requested that this application be tabled until the following meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Kirkemeyer?
That's correct.
Chair will entertain a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? This application will be tabled. We have one item under new business, and that is an application for site plan review for the property located at 8212 Manchester to construct a parking lot. Is the applicant here? Will you please step forward, sir, to the mic and introduce yourself and your application?
Hello, my name is Ken Aston, and I'm the owner of 8212 Manchester Road. And I think everybody here is familiar with it. It used to be the old Brentwood Inn, and then after that it was a sports attic, and then it subsequently burnt down. And I bought the lot. I'm in the real estate business. I bought the lot a few years ago with the intent on, trying to turn it into something better. And that's what I do. I've been in the real estate business my entire life, and I have a number of properties around the St. Louis area. And my goal is, to do a build-to-suit for somebody there. Wish I could tell you what that tenant was going to be, but I don't know. I have the property listed with a retail broker. And at the end of last year, Dean team needed some excess parking, and so I rented the parking lot to them since they were right next door to me, and found out that I wasn't supposed to do that after a couple months from the city, that we had to, come up and present a new site plan, which we've done here tonight. However, I've since found out, and I don't know if everybody up here is aware of the new section for temporary parking.
I can fill them in on that if you just want to
Okay.
finish some
So-
comments.
So my goal is to do something nice there, and I can give you examples of a lot of properties I own around St. Louis that you would be impressed with. But it's a little difficult right now because there's a lot of floodplain issues I think that the city is working on along with some other people. And that site is going to require the elevation to be raised in the rear a little bit and some floodplain mitigation, and it actually involves a lot more property owners, it involves the city, it involves a lot more governmental entities and FEMA than just me to try to do something on that site alone right now. And so what I want to do is at least try to mitigate my costs, hopefully clean the lot up and make it look better than it does now, because it doesn't look that great. And I thought I'd park cars there. And I guess at the end of the day, I don't want to build a big parking lot there, just build a brand new lot, and then the floodplain mitigation issues get resolved, and then I have to tear up a $300,000 lot and redesign a new building and a new parking that fits that building. It just doesn't make any sense. So what I'd like to do is be able to rent the lot as it is right now with some improvements to it. And those improvements would be better than what it is now. What I'd like to do is clean the lot, patch the lot, fill all the cracks on the lot, and I'd like to seal the lot, and I'd like to stripe the lot, and I would like to put a landscape buffer along Manchester Road east of the proposed entrance there. And I'd actually like you to disregard that entire site plan lot that you're looking at, because that was developed by my engineer over here prior to us finding out about the city's temporary parking permit that I could apply for,
Sure.
where you don't necessarily have to follow a brand-new parking lot plan. So that's my goal.
Okay. Ms. Kirkemeyer, staff report.
Sure, so I will go ahead and just try to fill in the information here. You can go ahead and have a seat if you want, but yeah, that was a great presentation, so at least you know what the desires of the petitioner are. This is a little bit of an unusual situation. As the property owner had described, he owns the lot that's right next to the Dean Team car lot at 8154 Manchester. So he's right about this spring and so forth when Dean Team just had an overflow of inventory. They were parking it on the lot, but it wasn't really recognized in terms of my interpretation that it met any of the parking lot standards or the parking lot requirements. So with their cooperation, they went ahead and removed the cars then at that time. And so then the way the property is zoned, light industrial, I did point out to the petitioner that the light industrial district allows by right any display, storage, or parking of outdoors of equipment, vehicles, or merchandise. That's a permitted right. It's a principal use. It's not just an accessory use, but it's listed actually in the light industrial as a permitted use. So then we engaged in the discussion that since this is a permitted use in the light industrial district, he would be allowed to go ahead and construct a parking lot and then be able to lease it out. So I think he's encouraged. The Dean Team still has some interest to do that. I had to have a separate conversation with the Dean Team because some of you may remember when the Dean Team came through here, I think it was back in 2006, to get their conditional use permit to be able to operate from their current location. So I guess, again, I don't see it as an expansion of the Dean Team because if he's allowed to do this as permitted by right in the light industrial district, if his deal didn't work out with the Dean Team, he could still construct the lot, lease it out to someone else. So I don't see that the two are necessarily paired together. However, I did caution the Dean Team that if you work out some kind of arrangement, then and if you decide to put any kind of improvements on there other than just the storage of vehicles, if you decide you need a sales kiosk over there, if you decide you need additional signage or anything like that, then that's really an expansion of your business, and then we'll have to go through the conditional use permit, look at the conditions, and if the expansion of that would be allowed. So those have been my interpretations of all of that information up to this point. So the one thing then that I also want to elaborate on, and the section is sitting now at your desk here tonight, is this article out of chapter 605, and it deals with temporary parking lots. And I was actually looking for something entirely different this morning when I saw this in the code. I didn't know this provision was in here. And again, normally for zoning and land use, what I do, I don't necessarily have a reason to look through license, taxation, and miscellaneous business regulations. So again, I was unaware that this was in the code. But this, as the couple sentence here talks about, that the use of property for temporary parking lots could also be permitted if they receive approval from the Board of Aldermen. So I'm thinking now, because the property owner has explained his short-term goals for the property, his long-term goals for the property, if conceptually the Planning and Zoning Commission kind of understand where he's coming from and that this is a temporary situation, then what may be best for all is still to review whatever improvements are made as a site plan amendment or a site plan review by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that would all operate the same. But additionally, when the site plan would get moved from P&Z and forwarded to the Board of Aldermen, then I think at that time, the property owner needs to request this permit for a temporary parking lot. So I think that because this provision was found by me just this morning, and I really apologize for that, but I think it does allow an opportunity to discuss conceptually, if you see this as just a short-term or kind of an interim use of the property, if that makes sense in being compliant with our comprehensive plan and what we're trying to do with the flood mitigation along Manchester Road. And if you agree with those ideas or principles conceptually, then maybe tonight is the discussion of what kind of improvements would you still expect him to make, even if it was going to serve just as a temporary parking lot. That's kind of where we're at right now. So I know he made a list of improvements that he would consider. You might have some other ideas. You might agree with some of the things, disagree. So I guess I'll kind of turn it back over to the chairman. I'll certainly try to answer any questions, but that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know if just discussion tonight might help us, you know, kind of find the direction we need to take here, I guess. So.
And Ms. Kirkmeyer, is it still, it's my understanding that there's some outstanding items that are associated with this application?
So yes, one thing then, when the site plan came in, because we are proceeding with some plans for Manchester Road, but also Manchester Road, state-controlled highway. So in order to do any of these improvements, again, whether it be a permanent or a temporary parking lot, the applicant will be required to get a right-of-way permit from Missouri Department of Transportation. So when the plans came in, I sent the plans that were already submitted, which you've got. Those are the plans now that MoDOT has seen. I did not have a conversation with them today discussing this to see where we were headed with it. But their review will be done, their comments will be given back to us. But again, regardless of which turn this will take, he'll need to get a right-of-way permit. And what I'm hoping to receive back from Department of Transportation, since we have the Manchester project, is one, the site plan, the one that you've seen, shows a 10-foot wide landscape buffer along Manchester Road. So I want to get an indication from MoDOT that when they come through and do the resurfacing project and redo the sidewalks, that is going to be sufficient. If they need any additional right-of-way, that we would get that as part of this project now. I think it would be okay, given the buffer that he's reserving, but I want to make sure of that. And then the other objective of the whole Manchester Road project is, instead of these situations like this gentleman's property where really you can take your car and go over any part of the frontage to access the property, we're trying to work with MoDOT to have really clearly identifiable access points along Manchester Road. So again, I think if, in this case, if the property owner would be willing to say that, yes, I'll live with this one access point here on Manchester Road, 24-foot wide, which again was shown on the plan. I want to get that feedback also from MoDOT, that that's, the direction that they were heading and what their intentions were.
And then associated with that landscape buffer and otherwise landscape on the site, it's my understanding that we're waiting to hear back from our landscape architect.
It has not gone that far yet, so we don't have a detailed landscape plan. What would be required by code would be to have landscaping along the frontage along Manchester Road, and also what the site plan that you do have shows also the 5-foot landscape buffer that would be required, since it's a parking lot, along the perimeter of the other property lines. So I guess where I would go with this is if you feel like both the landscape buffer with the frontage and around the perimeters of the property would still be required, whether this is temporary or permanent, then we would have to get together to get a final detailed landscape plan from the owner, and then that would be given to Planning Design Studios for review.
Yeah, I would think even if we did go the temporary route, we still want to have the site spruced up. I don't think we would need, depending on what the applicant wants to do. But it seems to me this application, and I understand your predicament, but it seems to me it's not quite ripe for our consideration, because I don't even know if you've decided what you would not like to do. It's not your fault. You just found out about this temporary permit option today. I mean, do you know what you want to do with this site? And if you do want to answer, if you could please step up to the mic, since it is being recorded.
I do. After I acquired the property, we hired an architect to do some different layouts for different types of buildings, one of which was a small shopping center. Would have two entrances, one on the east side, one on the west side, which is still less than what it is now, because right now the entire front of the property is an entry and exit. And we also designed a plan for a restaurant with drive-through, and that had two access points as well. And we did that so that my retail agent had something to market to prospective users. And then we found out about all the floodplain stuff, and that kind of put that on hold, and then I rented it to Dean. But so what I would like to do to the lot now, so that I can hold it for that point in time, would be to totally clean the lot, and it would basically involve an asphalt company. They've got a machine that goes over the entire lot, basically scrapes all the loose stuff off, everything. They would fill all of the potholes, smooth them out, fill all the cracks, and we would seal and stripe the lot. And we would reduce, for the temporary lot, the access point to the access point that shows on your site plan right now. But as far as MoDOT is concerned, I would like to reserve the ability to reopen at least an eastern access point if I have a user down the road that says, Ken, we have to have two access points into this property, one egress, one. And so that's my goal. And then the buffer in between, as Lisa described, we would, I could landscape the buffer any way you wanted. And, so your view, and you're all looking down, right now you're looking down at the lot, and you're looking at the back of Brentwood Industrial Park buildings. You would see a black lot with yellow stripes on it, and you would see landscaping for most of it, hopefully, which would shield part of it. And I'm very flexible on the type of landscape materials that, would be required there.
Mm-hmm. And I don't see there's not a landscape plan in here, is there?
No.
There's just the proposed plantings at the moment. We didn't get as far as a landscape plan at the moment.
Okay.
Because
And just for the record, Mr. Aston's engineer has stated that there's no landscape plan, but they've identified some plantings that they would propose to put there. I think we just need to, so what you're saying to the commission, though, is that this is essentially not where you'd like to go in light of your finding out about this permit idea, and that you'd like to pursue the temporary permit, but you'd like to change the way you'd like to approach that site.
And that's true, and I think that if you allow me to go that route, I think you'll be more impressed with the look of the lot than versus what it is now. And if in 180 days you're not impressed, you can deny me a permit, and then we're back to where we were. So.
Okay, well, it seems to me I'd like him to work with Andy, our landscape person, just to try to get on the same enough. We need a formal.
Is that somebody on staff here?
Yeah, it's under contract with the city, our landscape guy. Just
Okay.
to get on the same page. But let's just open it up to the floor for commissioners. Mr. Nurnberger?
Two questions. One, Lisa, what about MSD? Would they have any issues, anything about the water issues causing more flooding, having a full surface? Does it need to be impervious and that sort of thing?
It will require a permit from MSD. So, and again, that will be handled in terms of the drainage calculations and so forth, that they would have to show either that there's no additional post runoff or that it's being handled on the site before they're given a permit from MSD. Now, I would think that, regardless, again, if this is temporary or permanent, it's still going to be quite a bit of surfaced material. So again, I think stormwater is going to have to be addressed though either way.
I
So
I just want to make sure that is addressed, because I'm sure that's going to be, you know, if you could do something that'd be more than just a parking lot, but I don't think that's really in what you're planning, you know,
The
so,
current site plan actually shows a reduction in the
Yeah.
stormwater runoff at this time.
right?
There would be no, for the temporary parking lot, there would be no more surface runoff. There would be less surface runoff by virtue of the fact that we'd be building a 10-foot buffer along the entire front of the property. And that, you know, just by nature of the fact that it's soil, it will absorb water that otherwise would have run, you know, down the parking lot.
And then the other one question I had was for Lisa, as far as the Dean team, I was on the commission when that was approved, and there was some really strict things about their business plan as far as they were only supposed to have cars that are coming off of Dean lease. They're not supposed to be selling used cars on the parking lot, and I think there was a limit to how many cars that they can park on the lot. So I would make sure you check into that, because, you know, I don't remember it for sure, but it just seems to recall that.
There is definitely restrictions, no auto repair, anything like that.
But because we were worried about them parking cars, like too many cars on the lot. That was a fear. So if they're having more cars coming down there, that could be an issue. It's not his issue, because he wants to develop a parking lot, that's fine. But the Dean team issue should be really addressed, and make sure they're not doing something that they were not supposed to do.
So I think the fine line is that they're using this for storage and not for an extension of their sales lot. Because again, whether it's Dean Team or whoever it is, the storage is still permitted. The storage of vehicles is permitted by right as a principal use in the light industrial district. So that's kind of, I hear what you're saying, and I have looked at the
There-
ordinance, and I'll go over the conditions again,
Yeah.
but we did that early on, so.
Oh, how do you determine the difference between storage and sales? So they're gonna sell the car, and then they're gonna drive it to the next lot? Is that?
Well, right, because again, I talked to the individual from Dean Team, so it is one of those, I forgot, I apologize, 6 or 7 stores come to mind that they have in the area. So it is one of those that the vehicle is stored there, but it may go to another store. The other thing what happened to him, I think how all this kind of got started, is Dean Team also came across somehow an arrangement when one of the larger automakers was having some type of recall on
Volkswagen.
vehicles. Volkswagen. So they again had some kind of arrangement, and that's what was there this spring, was the storage of those recall vehicles. Now, they weren't inoperable because again, you can't store junk there. So I'm not implying that you can, have unlicensed and inoperable vehicles there, but
Would you fence it in? No.
No, I wouldn't plan on fencing it in.
I wouldn't put fencing in a floodplain.
Thank you, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Hanson.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jennifer Hansen. I'm actually a business owner looking across at that parking lot. Based on what you've told me with respect to just the minimal improvements, whether it's under a temporary permit or something in between, I would appreciate, and I speak for probably all the business owners on that row, I would appreciate the improvements that you are looking to make. I think anything we can do. Dean Team is a good neighbor, for somebody who parks there and spends 8 or 10 hours a day in that area. I don't suspect any of the other business owners in the area, maybe I'm speaking, out of turn, would have any issue with storage, as long as they maintain that second parking lot the way that they do their original lot. So, anything you can do in the interim, if you build, even better, but a parking lot that was refinished and striped and that had the buffer, the things that we talked about today, I think would be very welcome in that area of Manchester.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Moran.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is mainly for my information, Lisa, but after the temporary period of 180 days is over, what happens then?
So, yes, I mean, the way this reads, it says it's to operate a temporary parking lot for a period not to exceed 180 days. It doesn't really talk whether an extension could be received or not, but again, it doesn't also limit like how many times you can apply for the permit. So is that good or bad? In one way, and what I explained this morning, I'm like, you can kind of do a trial by error. You could kind of, if it was approved for 180 days, it certainly doesn't mean there's any guarantees that after, on the 181st day, that he doesn't have to cease. So it's kind of like you're taking that risk, but in a way, it also gives, I think, an opportunity to see how things are operating and functioning, and this does seem like it's a good, interim use for the property. So I would say the way I would read that is that, yes, we know we're gonna put 180 days on the clock, but I still don't see a restriction that he just could not reapply. But whether he's gonna get it, don't know.
All right, just wanted to make sure that's how I read it too.
Okay.
Other questions, comments from commissioners? So we need to get MoDOT, where MoDOT is on this. We need to know where MSD is on this. I'd like to know what he wants to do and what he's willing to do, which is, we want as much as possible in terms of landscaping there.
Well, I will submit to Lisa a plan that will show what I just discussed here tonight.
Okay, good.
And I don't know, is that something that I need to come back before P&Z? I don't know. If it's just something that I deal with
So here's the next
the
step.
staff, you know.
You work with MoDOT, you work with MSD, get that squared away as much as possible. You put together your formal proposal as to what you'd like to do, which incorporates landscape after you talk with our landscape contract engineer. And then we meet at the end of the month to try to figure out where you are and whether that's palatable to the commission. And if it is, then that subcommittee would recommend approval, and then if the commission agreed with the subcommittee, then we would pass it at our September or October 11th meeting.
And I just want to add one thing to that. I don't think that I necessarily have to go to MSD for an approval, because I'm repairing what's there right now.
Okay.
That's all I'm doing.
Any
I think
required
we-
approvals?
And planning.
I think we need to get that, though, verified by them. I think that is
okay.
the question.
I could probably do that.
So work with someone over there and determine what would be
Okay.
necessary. So.
Sound like a good plan?
Thank you.
Everybody okay with that? Yep. Okay, great. Well, then we will see you the next, Ms. Kirkemeyer, what is our next subcommittee meeting date?
So the next meeting would be September 27th.
6 o'clock?
September 27th at 6 PM? That sound okay?
September 27th at 6, perfect.
I'll throw out my monthly ask for 7 o'clock subcommittee meeting.
Great. Duly noted. Thank you, Ms. Hanson.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
And the one, I guess, item then, before we leave that entirely too, that section that was found this morning talks about that, along with requesting this permit through the Board of Aldermen, again, conditions can be placed on it. So it says, all conditions prescribed by the Board of Aldermen relating to the construction and the use of the temporary parking lot. So when it's in subcommittee, if there's any conditions that you want to think about forwarding, I think that certainly, falls under your role as well, so.
And Lisa will let you know when we need all of this, but the sooner the better, so we can get this out to the commissioners before the subcommittee meeting on the 27th, so they come armed with questions. And Ms. Hanson, if you have thoughts, please, I'd like to hear those before that meeting.
Thank you, I will.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Astor. On to the next matter, aldermanic report. I see no aldermen or women. City planners report, Ms. Kirkemeyer.
So I have two items tonight. One is to give an update on the comprehensive plan. I had emailed you a few weeks ago and said that what I was hearing from the consultant was that we would get a draft of the comprehensive plan in August. So there was one delivered on the 14th of August, I believe it was. So I've had time to review it. I feel like it fell short in a few categories in terms of the implementation section, and there was an economic development strategy component that was to be included, as well as residential design guidelines. So I had a discussion with them, and what we talked about was to really kind of give them an opportunity to make sure that they have delivered everything that was listed in their scopes of services, and that it was the product that they wanted to see be delivered to us. So the long and short of it is they're getting, a few more weeks and so forth to work on it. I'm also going to get back with even a more detailed review of the draft plan. So I'm not trying to take the project over by any means, but I just felt like we needed to have a much more comprehensive draft. I didn't want you to have to run through the first plan and then have to run through a draft review again. So with that, that's how things were decided between staff and the consultant. So there still should be something here in the next few weeks, and then we should be able to pick up the schedule that I had outlined, that we would get we would probably convene one of your regular meetings an hour early to have them present, and then also include the other advisory committee members as well to that meeting. So it still looks like we're certainly on target for this fall, but I just wanted to give you that update. And then the second item was I also gave you all a copy of UMSL's, the Planning Zoning Commissioners Training. I've actually gone to some of these modules. I haven't for a while, but it's just a program that's been running for several years. I don't know if any of you've had an opportunity maybe to go before, but it is a good program. It's always in the fall, and this just describes the different training or classes that are available. And I looked at our budget. We're kind of winding down our budget for this year, but I think we could probably go ahead and pay or reserve for maybe 4 or 5 modules. So I don't know between all of you if any of you have any interest in this at all, but I don't know how you want to handle it, Chairman, but if anybody has interest. But again, I think we could probably make about 4 or 5 reservations for, the modules, or for some to go to the same session, however you think it would work best, so.
Yeah, so I did this 5, 6 years ago. Mr. Lewis, I believe, did it as well. I do recommend it. If you have time, if you can make it work, it would only improve your abilities here on the commission. It's dry, no doubt about it. It's dry, but it will make you a better commissioner, and if you have the time, then I would certainly encourage you to do it. I'd say if you want to do it, just let Lisa know, and hopefully we can sign you up for as much as you want to do.
And if you have any questions or issues just getting a hold of me, Kimberly's back now from her maternity leave, so we're glad to have her back, but also obviously she can help us out with reservations as well, so just let one of us know. Great,
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Kirkemeyer? Okay, site plan, we'll see as many people as we can make it, the 27th at 6. Rationale, I don't think we have anything. Any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Our motion carries. Stand adjourned.